Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby. If you are new here, welcome. And for today's video, I wanted to share with you guys the real truth about being an expat and talk about all of the things that people usually don't talk about. So if you guys don't know me, I am a Honduran expat working and living in Latvia for over 5 years now. And in this channel, I share all about culture and lifestyle as an expat in Latvia. So if you are interested in that, definitely consider subscribing. So for this video, I wanted to share with you the full picture of what it's like to live abroad and be an expat. Because I know that most people, when they think about life abroad, the first thing that comes to mind is usually the glamorous, fabulous lifestyle they see on Instagram. They think about all the traveling, all of the exciting new things, adventures, all the freshness of having everything new. When the reality is that life abroad isn't always like that. I would like to say that being an expat is more of like a roller coaster of emotions, and you do have some pretty big highs, but you also have some pretty big lows. So I think it's super important to be aware of this in case you guys are searching to move abroad anytime soon, or you're just generally interested about the topic. I think that even in the expat community, we usually don't talk about these things because nobody wants to be vulnerable and talk about their feelings, but it is super important to talk about it at some point and understand that it is okay to feel this way and that you are not alone. So if you guys are expats and you are watching this, definitely drop me a comment down below. Before starting though, I wanted to clarify a little bit about the differences between being an immigrant and being an expat. So an immigrant is a person who moves abroad and is searching for a permanent residence or citizenship in that country, whereas an expat is someone who moves for a temporarily period of time or for an indefinite period of time. So keeping this in mind, let's get started. So the first one is the feeling of guilt and of constantly missing out. So I think that this one is the hardest one because when you decide to move abroad, you are literally living a full life behind you. Regardless of whatever reasons you have for moving abroad, for the most part, being an expat is a very self-centered pursuit. You are thinking about yourself and you're thinking about your life, and you leave so much behind you. You leave friends, family, and you miss out on so many important life events, weddings, birthdays, important milestones, and even some difficult circumstances. And with all that comes a lot of guilt. So I think that this one is particularly the hardest one, and I think that is one that kind of never goes away because no matter how long you've been living abroad, you are always going to be missing and feeling guilty about not being there with your family and with your loved ones. And you just have to find a way of how making this load a little bit lighter for yourself. So one way I try to deal with this is prioritizing being in contact with my family and my loved ones on a regular basis. Even though I am not there with them physically, I still want them to know that I love them very much and that they're still very much part of my life as much as I am still part of theirs. Also, I try to be very present whenever I am talking to them, or if I am visiting, I really try to cherish these important moments and occasions because I know that I don't get to have them all the time. It also kind of helps me to think about the reason of why I'm doing this, and it kind of really makes it a little bit lighter, though unfortunately you're always gonna feel guilty and you're always going to be missing out, and that is just something that you have to deal with as being an expat. So the second one is the feeling of being an outsider. As much much as you try to incorporate yourself in the new society, and it's so important to keep an open mind and really put the effort to try to learn the new culture and learn the new language and try to understand the standards of life in that specific place, you are always going to feel like an outsider. And I think that maybe after 20 years of living in the same place, you start feeling it more like home, but till a certain extent, you will always feel like an outsider because so much of who a person is comes from where they come from, you know, where they grew up and all that. So it is super important to try to incorporate yourself the best that you can in your new place, but you will always be a little bit of an outsider and you will never be 100% a local. The third one is the struggle of socializing and making friends. So I think that unless you have the experience of moving abroad, you really have no idea how hard it is to make friends when you are an adult. When you move to a new country and you become an expat, you really leave everything behind and you don't have with you all of your high school friends, your university friends, your family, your ex-colleagues and all that. You are really starting fresh and you are alone. So you really need to push yourself out of your comfort zone and really try to make the effort of just making new friends and trying to reach out and maybe putting yourself in situations that you wouldn't normally put yourself in, because you just gotta be out there and, you know, say yes to things in order to meet people and have new friends. You sometimes even will end up spending time with people that aren't particularly your cup of tea in order to just find some people that you really connect with and that you can really establish a relationship. If not, it can rather be a very lonely experience, and you definitely don't want to be alone and deal with all of the loads and the struggles of being an expat and not having a support system and just friends to actually talk to in real life. So the fourth thing is that everyday tasks become 100% more difficult. When you are an expat, you really don't know how things work, and simple tasks like going to a supermarket, trying to find a particular product, trying to get your transportation card, or just getting from point A to point B can be a complete hassle. Especially at the beginning when you just arrive to that place, sometimes just getting your groceries and doing the most simple things can really feel like a great accomplishment because everything just requires so much more effort and you really need to understand how things work. It is definitely important to keep an open mind and also just have a little bit of humor about the whole process. Otherwise, simple tasks are going to become very heavy and just very daunting if you don't know how to deal with them. The fifth one is the comparison game. And this is something that it is very inevitable because when you move to a different country, obviously everything is going to be different. Some things are going to be different for the better, some things are going to be different for the worse, and you can't really help comparing how things work in this place comparing to how they work in your home country. And this comparison game can really trick your brain, and sometimes you just need to understand that things are going to be different, and different doesn't always mean better or always mean worse, and sometimes it's just different, and you really need to embrace that and just accept it as a reality, and the better off you'll be trying to handle how things are done. The sixth one is becoming more of a minimalist. Now, this one I think it's a rather personal one, but if you guys are expats and you are watching this, please let me know if you relate. But I think that when you move into a new country, you just come with a limited number of things. You know, you come with your suitcase, maybe a couple of boxes of belongings, but you don't have your lifelong collection of things. So you really become a little bit more of a minimalist, and you realize that you don't really need all of that stuff to live your normal life. Like, you don't need an avocado slicer, and you don't need a lemon squeezer and all of these gadgets that we acquire to make our life more easier, you realize that when you move abroad, you don't really need that much stuff to survive. So the seventh thing is that homesickness is real. And I think that this one is also a really hard one, because if you've never experienced homesickness, it's really hard to relate. So sometimes how I think about it myself is that when you move into a new country, everything becomes more difficult. You know, you're out of your comfort zone. You're constantly trying to put, for example, the double the work because you are not in your zone. And I think that it's like running a marathon, and you are running and you're pushing yourself and you're just trying to keep going. And throughout the race, there are moments that you just want to sit in a comfortable chair and, you know, take a breath and just be in your zone. And homesickness, I think that sometimes it relates a little bit to that feeling, because it is so important to go back at some point and just reconnect with your home and with your culture, especially if you are in a place that is completely different and that you're not even speaking your own language. Being away for such a long time can really make it difficult, and there are times in an expat's life that you just hate everything and everyone and you just want to go home. I've put a rule for myself that I don't want to let more than 1 year without being back home and meeting my family and my loved ones, because that's a really important thing for me, and I think that it really recharges me and kind of helps this homesickness feeling a little bit better. Though in the current circumstances with COVID and all that, it's harder, and I know that it can make this homesickness even worse. But if you've never experienced it, it is real and it can make you feel really bad at some point, but understand that everyone goes through it and that it's completely normal. So the eighth thing is that you need to make a social relationship cut. Now, let me explain this. By this, I don't mean that you're suddenly writing to people and saying, okay, we're no longer friends or we're no longer speaking or something like this. But when you move abroad, and specifically there's, for example, a really big time difference, it is just really hard to trying to maintain your home relationships and the new relationships you're trying to make in the new place, and also just living life and trying to be present in your current life and also present back home. It's just really hard to cope, and you can't really have it both ways. So at some point or another, you do make a social cut and you just choose a couple of people that you do want to be in contact with on an everyday basis. And then there's a big group of people that you still love, acquaintances that you cherish, but that you can't really be in contact all the time because it's just literally impossible. And it's something that you need to understand at some point, is that with some people you're just gonna grow apart, and with some people you're still gonna be able to find a way to have this real relationship even though you don't get to speak with them every day. And that is just the great thing about some friendships, that even though you haven't spoken, for example, in a year, in 2 years, you happen to reach out and you realize that the relationship is still the same and that the friendship really hasn't changed. But you definitely make this cut because it is really hard to be in contact with everyone all the time and just make it as if you've never moved away, because the reality is that you have, and things change. So the ninth one is that you change and you grow exponentially when you are an expat. And this is kind of like a really cool one, but also a really scary one, because when you move abroad, you really leave everything behind, you know, you change your perspective and it really opens your mind to everything. And sometimes that's gonna cause you to maybe change a way of thinking, of how you see things, or you just grow. You encounter so many experiences and just situations that make you grow as a person, which is very great, and I think it's one of the best things about the experience. But it can also make it really scary because everyone's afraid of change and you never want to be a completely different person and just forget everything that you've learned back home. The reality is that you change so much when you are abroad. The last one is the the feeling and that attitude of just being a badass, being fearless, being able to tackle anything and everything that life presents to you. So I think that once you move abroad and after time passes, you realize that you're doing rather well for yourself and that you've managed to more or less have everything together and just succeed in a different place. I think it really gives you a boost of confidence and just this attitude that, hey, no matter what life brings to you, you can deal with it. Because if you moved from this country to this country and you've made it, you can really make it anywhere. And that is something that really gives you such an edge and just really changes your mindset and just your attitude of how you see life. And it's definitely one of the best things I think that being an expat has really given me, and I know that has given a lot of other people as well. So that's it, friends. These are the truths about being an expat and about life abroad. I hope that I gave you a real idea of all the good, but also the not so perfect reality of when you are living abroad. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And again, if you want to stick around, do consider subscribing and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I hope to see you in a future video. Bye!